All right, and we do it again. And it's the worst fantasy football show ever. See, that's the music that I'm using right now. Woo! All right, with your host, me, proving once again that it's not only the worst fantasy football show ever, but quite possibly the worst television show ever. I would say that anyone has ever seen, but I'm not even convinced that anyone has ever seen this show. Moving right along, we're going to talk about all of our dynasty teams and our redraft teams in those leagues. Get you up to date on what's going on there. There's been quite a bit of changeover in the standings in some of those leagues. We'll probably do some trade action talk and talk a little bit about top performers as well. But joining me on the phone is my main man Ryan from Argentina. How you doing, Ryan?
Hello, I'm doing all right.
I wanted to turn the floor over to you to start the evening. I think you've got something on your mind.
Yeah, I'd like to just make a shout out to those terrible refs that are out there embarrassing themselves. I certainly don't feel like they're an embarrassment to humankind or any of those types of things. They're just trying to do their job, but they're obviously way underqualified for their job. If I was a Packers fan right now, I'd just be beside myself in anger with how terrible they've done in this particular game, where they have actually decided, in my opinion, the ending of a game, where some of the other ones maybe didn't completely determine an outcome. I know that I got to actually sit down and watch some of the games throughout the weekend for the first time, and got to actually sit down and watch a whole Chiefs game, and it was unbelievably long because they couldn't make any call that was close that didn't get reviewed.
And it was in excess of 3.5 hours, I believe. Is that correct?
That was just to end of regulation.
Right.
And so that's just unacceptable. The NFL, I mean, I'm not going to say anything that most of you probably haven't read or anything, but I do feel like the NFL is being completely hypocritical if they're going to hold their players to all these high standards and talk about how, protecting the shield and all these other kind of things. They need to actually stand up and do something now about the replacement referees because they are embarrassing themselves. It's not completely ruining the game. It's certainly not going to ruin the financial impact on the game, except maybe some of the bettors that were hosed last night. But the thing that I do think it does is it does infect it's infecting, but it's also affecting the integrity of what they try to produce and what they want to try to pretend like they stand for.
Absolutely. Now, are you concerned about any fines that Roger Goodell might hand down to you for you publicly criticizing his referees?
As a non-paid employee of the NFL, I'm not.
I read today, I glanced over this story, and I don't know if I don't understand it. I didn't read the whole thing. But what I did see was that maybe the referees that the NFL is using right now were rejects from the Lingerie League. Did you read that story?
I did not.
That they were not good enough to referee in the Lingerie League.
That wouldn't surprise me in the slightest.
And we talked about this the other day, and at that point, I just didn't really care. I had watched all the games, almost literally. And the refereeing was bad here and there, and I hadn't really, it just hadn't bothered me much because refereeing is always highly criticized, it seems like. But this weekend in particular, it became pretty obvious. I mean, they're going to get better, obviously. But there's just some nuances to the thing. I think that was the San Francisco game where they gave the coach either extra timeouts, and then maybe there was another game where they gave extra challenges or something to that effect.
Yeah, well, there was a challenge, and they actually ended up getting an extra timeout.
And so that is definitely ridiculous for sure. I think last night's final call was a replay thing, and I want to point out, I think most of us have heard it 1,000 times already, that the regular replay refs, the ones in the booths, are not the replacements. And there is at least one official that oversees or supervises the whole officiating crew. that is not a replacement. So they're not strictly on their own, but I think what you're saying too is a lot of their calls are leading to review, whereas maybe some of them wouldn't if the other officials were in place.
Right.
And it's time consuming, and I mean I think that you never know, but it seems like that call would have been the same at the end of the game last night.
I'm just hoping for the Zebras in the background there, them getting more action than the replacement referees in the upcoming weeks.
Yeah, I almost, definitely. So, yeah, it's on everybody's mind right now for sure. Ultimately, I'm still glued to the TV and and that kind of thing when the games are on. But
oh yeah, and hey, like your old buddy Jerry Jones says, news is news,
that's
whether
true.
it's good or bad. And I'm not sure that's not his exact quote, but that's basically what he believes in.
Yeah.
Get it out there.
Well, it's got to be embarrassing for the NFL at this point, on some level, for sure. And I think another thing, and I'll say this real quick because we probably need to move on, but all the coaches and players and the reactions and the overreactions that we're having, and Belichick grabbing the ref, and coaches and players getting in the ref's faces and things like that, that's bad for the game, and that probably is happening because of the substitute teacher effect.
I agree. And then not only that, sending out your boss's telephone number to the national public.
Right.
Which is probably something people could have gotten anyway, but wouldn't
Right.
have taken the time to get.
So there's no doubt that there's some sort of a problem happening for sure. So
Well, let's get back to
the players.
fantasy instead of reality.
Yes, indeed. Well, the top performers this week, the refs are not on that list, fortunately. So let's have a look at quarterbacks. And what I'm seeing here is Ben Roethlisberger, Matt Schaub, Joe Flacco, Andy Dalton, Christian Ponder, Jake Locker, Andrew Luck, Matt Ryan, Drew Brees, and Robert Griffin Jr. So I don't remember enough, and I'm not good at remembering things like this, but every week this week, it hasn't been Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Cam Newton, Michael Vick, rounding out the top five.
No, quarterbacks, which have over the last several years been more of the consistent performers, this year have not been. They are not the high-level players are not consistently playing at the high levels overall.
Right.
And I mean, you look at your buddy Bob. He had initially a terrible game, but he puts it on with the rush yards and the multifaceted attack, and boy, he's right up there in fantasy points.
Absolutely. I made the transition this week in one of my leagues, which we'll talk about, from Jay Cutler, who does not appear in the top 20 again, to Andrew Luck, who's number 7 on this list.
Yeah.
And I was extremely pleased with that. I don't know. I mean, he looks great. Let me just say that.
I think he has the third highest pass attempts in the league.
Yeah. And I think that the quarterbacks who had faced Jacksonville in the weeks before hadn't done spectacularly. I mean, I think they ran the ball against those teams quite a bit. But he really put up a great game and a smart game, too. Let's see here. Moving on. Running backs. Again, it's people from your team, essentially. Jamal Charles, Andre Brown, MJD. Hey, all right. Ray Rice, LaShore, McFadden, Foster, Jaquez Rogers, Trent Richardson, Michael Turner, top 10.
My boy Jamal Charles.
Your boy Jamal Charles
Putting it
blew
down.
up. Talk about that as a Chiefs fan and a Jamal Charles owner.
Oh, it was just a great week overall. I mean, just the Chiefs coming back in a game. Castle still doesn't understand that you have to throw the ball sometimes 8 yards when you need 7 yards for a first down instead of throwing it for -2 or 3 and then expecting your receiver to pick up 11. But, hey, when you've got Jamal Charles running like he did, just give it to him. Let him tear it up.
Yeah, that was insane. 233, was that total yards or?
No, that was his rushing
Just
yards.
rushing. I mean, that is sick.
I believe he might have had another 40, 50 passing.
Golly. Yeah, right, because it was just under 300 or something like that. So, LaShore is one of your boys and one of your sleepers or whatever preseason picks.
Yep.
He was actually suspended, I suppose, and not hurt in any way. But he's definitely making it happen. And then Arian Foster, no surprise. Ray Rice, no surprise. Jaquez Rogers is doing what all of us, I think, thought he was going to do, which is basically take over for the dead and buried Michael Turner, who had a game this week, I should say, but I don't think that will continue. Wide receivers. Let's see. I have a team with A.J. Green and Calvin Johnson on it, by the way. So those were number 1 and 2. Torrey Smith, heartwarming win, heartfelt win, whatever. Larry Fitzgerald, Mike Wallace, Nate Burleson, surprise. Santonio Holmes, Ramses Barden filling in for Nix. Wes Welker, Eric Decker. Other notables on there. Golden Tate got lucky. Steve Johnson, Brandon Lloyd, Stokely. He's an interesting pick, I think, in Denver, Brandon Stokely.
Yep.
He doesn't go to him often, but when he gets in a real pinch, he will throw to a double-covered Stokely, it seems like.
That's his Linus blanket.
Yeah. Antonio Brown is on there as well. Percy Harvin. Julio Jones had a down week, still in the top 20. So,
not a lot to say other than Torrey Smith.
And,
really,
Fitzgerald made a good comeback this week. But
yes,
going right ahead with Smith, yeah.
Yeah, Torrey Smith just, with his brother's death and things like that, kind of stepping up the way that Favre did on Monday Night Football against the Oakland Raiders when his dad died a couple years ago.
Absolutely.
Just having a huge game.
And then I think there's something to be said about Ramses Barden. Yes, it was right for him because Nix was out. But still, I mean, that's not a guaranteed, awesome game for somebody. He did a very Victor Cruz-esque kind of deal on Thursday night. Good to see Wes Welker back in there, too.
Yes. Yeah. Welker and Fitzgerald are doing what they're supposed to now.
Yep. On to the tight ends. Again, this is crazy, I think. Just crazy. I will say that between you and I, we are getting back into our tight end whispering, I'm pretty sure. I feel good about that. Kyle Rudolph is a beast. He was number 3 on this list. Martellus Bennett 4. Jared Cook had a good game, but then got hurt. And then Jermaine Gresham. Fred Davis, Vernon Davis, Greg Olson, Dennis Pitta. To me, the real story is Dennis Pitta. I can't believe that he's maintaining his level.
Well, when you're BFFs with the quarterback, and they're going to kind of go to you. I think he's going to do the same as what Witten has done with Romo in the past.
Uh-huh. And I'm still loving Owen Daniels, by the way. He continues to be nice and consistent. At number 11 this week again.
Yep.
So,
once again,
Miller,
big names, not necessarily at the top of that.
I'm sorry?
Once again, big names,
right.
Not necessarily near the top.
Absolutely, and I'm losing faith in Jermichael Finley every day.
I think Jermichael Finley, I think Gronk hasn't looked as well. I think that there's some guys that down low you can be okay with. I'm not convinced still that even though he did after the tongue lashing I gave him last week, did perform this week, that Jermaine Gresham, I think that this was more of a lucky week for him and kind of a matchup thing. I'm not thinking he has staying power.
I don't know.
Well, you love him.
I do. I think he just needed some time. I think that the effects of that injury during preseason was causing him more something. It was causing him more something than we knew or were letting on. So only time will tell on that one. So looking at the, let me bring it up here. Nope, that's the wrong button. There we go. Looking at the Dynasty League standings. Gosh. There's only one team in this league that is undefeated. Oh, that's my team. Woo! Yeah! But you've made a huge surge, points-wise, I guess, because you're in 4th place now out of 12.
Yep, coming back up.
And you had a huge game, actually, this week.
I did.
With Jamal Charles, he definitely helped you out. But you had a really solid, steady scoring presence Oh, wait. What did I do here? Oh, yeah. I had the wrong. I had last week's standings up. I wanted to compare them, and I was wrong. So, no, I did have this week's. I wanted to have last week's up. Doesn't matter. I'm moving on. So this week, let's see here. For your team, yeah, let's have a look at that. Before we go
Overall, for my team, for this week, I've just got some.
What do I look like, me lad? See that? The buckles on me shoes? Why, I'm a leprechaun.
Yeah, fighting
Maybe the
Irish.
luck of the
y'all.
Irish will keep up with me.
So, yeah, so we're looking at your matchup, you versus Gronk, who was the first place team before you guys battled this week.
Yes. And now I'm going up this week against the second place team. So, kind of a tough road here at the beginning, but that's okay. We'll see if we can continue to fight through.
Well, yeah, and you just demolished him. First of all, you had Torrey Smith, Jamal Charles, Drew Brees had a real good game. Kyle Rudolph, man, I love him. I'm totally sold on what on what you're seeing in him now. And then just solid performances otherwise. Whereas Gronk's just petered out. I mean, just didn't do anything really. His high scorer was C.J. Spiller, who got hurt halfway through a game.
Mhm. Yeah, he had a bad luck week like I had last week.
Well, we're hoping for that to happen again. But for you this week, you're up against Tough Acton Tinacton. And his strength, it appears, is where? Wide receiver, I guess.
Yes, he's definitely set at wide receiver.
And
running back's definitely where he's hurting.
Yes, indeed. So it seems like you have a definite advantage over him in running back area, potentially quarterback. Breeze, they're playing the Packers, I think, this week, right? So you would think that would be a shootout. But you never know anymore.
That's right.
Aaron Rodgers has been a huge fantasy disappointment. Jeremy Maclin is supposed to play again.
Yep, Macklin's coming back. Sounds like maybe Ahmad Bradshaw.
Yep.
Jonathan Stewart's coming back. I'm going to have some decisions to make this week, and I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to line it all up yet.
I don't know who Oakland is playing. It's not Miami. That's already happened, probably.
Broncos.
They're playing the Broncos?
Mm-hmm.
So Denarius Moore, I think, becomes super interesting now. He seems like he's back on to full health. He received a ton of targets last week. And DHB ought to be out for at least a week.
Yeah, but they've got Champ Bailey, and they've kind of done some okay jobs against some of the receivers.
Yeah, I agree.
But Oakland, the way they just keep chucking the ball.
I think that's what's going to happen. Even if Carson Palmer throws 2 or 3 interceptions, I think there's a great chance Denarius Moore hits the board, though. We'll see. I don't know. And then if Gates plays, you got him and Rudolph. Man.
I think I have to play. I'm going to definitely play Rudolph in the way he's performing, but I think I almost have to play Gates, take up one of my flex spots.
Yep. And I love it. I've been loving playing 2 tight ends. Go figure. For me this week, I lacked 6 points, scoring the exact same, 8 points. I lacked 8 points, scoring the exact same total that I'd had both week 1 and week 2. So my team is at least consistent. I can't say the same for Ben Tate, but whatever. Really poor wide receiver play out of my team, which was completely just covered by tight ends and running backs. So, and my defense rocked.
Yeah, your defenses just overall have just been smoking.
And I've been choosing the right ones. Either that or they're all just performing, and it doesn't matter.
Nope, mine have not been performing. It's my weakest spot. So.
But yeah, I'm 3-0. I'm loving this league. I mean, honestly, and I'm sure you remember this. I went into the draft for this league as a dynasty league, looking toward the future. And told you, I mean, yeah, I want to win, I want to compete or whatever, but my true focus was at the future. So I'm a little surprised. Malcolm Floyd has been doing a lot better. LaFell had a bad week, but he's been doing great. You know.
Now your two big things will be is if Jay Cutler performs at an above mediocre level, and if Hakeem Nicks is back for you.
Oh, that's right, because I won this week without Hakeem Nicks easily. You know, very easily. So to have him back, no doubt, I'll love that. Sounds like Forte is out again this week, even though maybe it's not official, but that's what everybody's talking about, and that's fine with me on some level since I have Bush as a backup. So coming up this week, then I'm facing your nemesis that you beat down last week, the Gronk. Hoping that he'll just have as bad a week as he did. Just the Colts and the Steelers on bye this week, so it doesn't affect his team at all. It does mean that I have to play Jay Cutler. I don't think I'm ballsy enough to go Russell Wilson just yet. But I think Cutler has a decent matchup.
I don't know.
I can't remember who it is, though.
It's the Cowboys.
Oh, right.
I like Russell Wilson against the Rams better.
That's right. It was the Rams. So, yeah, I mean, that's going to be a choice. That's going to be a decision.
I have a Jay Cutler plan for you.
You do. Let's hear it.
And it's actually some trade that I'm working on right now.
Oh.
There is a owner in the league who lost Matthew Stafford, and his only other quarterback on his roster is Flynn, who doesn't play. And so I'm in the process of sending a bunch of trades out to him. I think he'll probably be waiting to see how the waiver wire plays out and if he can secure Sean Hill.
We're talking about Dynasty League, right?
What's that?
Dynasty League?
In Dynasty. And the only other guy besides Hill that he could get is Kevin Cobb. So there's not much out there as far as options for him. So I'm not trying to kill him with trade, and he actually wants Christian Ponder off my roster, of course, because Ben Roethlisberger is on a bye. But where this affects him with Stafford is not only is he going to be out this week, he's on bye next week. So 2 weeks in a row, he's going to be without a quarterback.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. That sounds really good for me, possibly.
So I would, after we do this show, see what you could get for Cutler.
Yeah, and we'll watch. We'll make a waiver announcement here in about a minute or two when it comes through. I know I put several things in, so I even went all the way up to double digits on a couple of them. So we'll hustle through this stuff. Yeah, that sounds great. I'm really excited about getting rid of Cutler since he did suck an egg for the second week in a row. I just, I've always had the luck that I bench him and play Luck, and then, Cutler goes off for 50 and Luck scores 8 or something. So, all right. So moving on to Bad Boys, because I think we're at the 25-minute mark-ish right now, and we know how that goes. Moving Bad Boys. Let's see here. That is not correct. This is okay, I forgot. I have a plan, and I forget my plans all the time. This is, in fact, last week's standings, where I was in 6th place, 1-1, and you had moved up out of the basement?
Yes.
Yeah, to 1-1 at 8th place. So now...
I'm in 5th, you're in 10th.
Yeah, I'm in 10th. Gosh, things change so quickly in this league. And I am just a hair away from being in the basement. And not a good matchup again this week. I don't know. I'm going to get thumped, I'm pretty sure, in this league. So, speaking of which, let's see here. For Argentina last week, you wait a second. Did you lose?
No, I won 217 to 181 over Niners
Fanatic.
Fanatic.
I got you. I was looking at the projections. My bad. I was sure that you won. Yeah, you had a great game. Again, Torrey Smith on this team as well. Larry Fitzgerald. Jermaine Gresham, as we already talked about. McCoy was serviceable. C.J. Spiller was quite serviceable for only half a game.
Yes. Steven Jackson, Michael Vick had below games, but it was good enough.
And he only had 2 people really shine for him, Ray Rice and Tom Brady. And then everybody else was definitely below average,
Mm-hmm.
at least. So, what's that say for you coming up this week? You've got Old Man of Gridiron. And while we're talking about that, let me refresh my Dynasty League. Okay, here's what happened. So, let me do this. Okay, real quick. Waiver wire and Dynasty League, Red and Yellow Fever acquired Ramses Barden for $22. Dropped Leonard Hankerson. Reaper Crew picked up Tashard Choice for $15. Dropped Chris Rainey. I won Kevin Cobb this week. Won. And dropped Brandon Jackson. He's finally out there for you. Looks like you picked up Curly for $2 and dropped Donald Driver. And that's it. So I know I had one in for Barden. I would have thought I put in $22 as well, but there's probably a waiver priority, right?
Yeah, I'm sure it's based off a record or something.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, that's odd. I did $22.
Sean Hill, not out there.
Not out there. So
I mean, still out there.
so I should
still
go
out there.
pick him up probably.
Yeah. He
All
would
right.
actually, I think, for your team, I would like him playing better than any of your starting quarterbacks.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, because of his weapons, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And he came in for just like a quarter, scored more points than Jay Cutler did all the game.
Well, that's really not a ringing endorsement of any kind, but I know what you're trying to say. Okay, so your matchup this week with Old Man, he's got Cam Newton, Andre Johnson, Wes Welker, Pierre Garcon maybe, Frank Gore, Pierre Thomas, Vernon Davis, Danny Amendola, and whatever else. Versus Vic, Fitz, Smith, Nix, McCoy, Jacks, Gresham, LaShore. I like your chances here, don't you?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have a decent shot. It all, if Pierre Garcon's still out, I think I've got a good shot. Pierre Thomas, he keeps performing way better than I've expected him to. So, but yeah, I like my chances against him.
Which is kind of shocking. I mean, I think Sproles had a down week this week, but he's been hot the last 2 weeks before that. So, yeah, and you guys are both 2-1, so it's very much an important matchup, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping for you because I'm feeling like I'm headed down the wrong path. Here's my loss. Not only did I score the league lowest this week, I was the biggest blowout as well, with 133 points versus 247 from my opponent. I don't know what to do about Chris Johnson, quite honestly.
I think you bench him. I think
Yeah.
keep him, but you bench him.
It's just like, it's sickening, Was that my number one pick?
I believe so.
Yeah. God, terrible. So coming up, I'm facing SN this week, and it's not terrible, but he's got Arian Foster and Adrian Peterson, both with decent matchups. I mean, Detroit's not great, but I'm just saying.
I do think that having Jacquizzi Rogers out there, or Jacquez Rogers out there, he would be a guy to go pick up. I'm not saying necessarily cut Johnson for him, but he'd be somebody you could go look at.
Well, I agree. And, I mean, another thing that I've got on my side in that situation is I've got Michael Bush and Matt Forte and Stephen Ridley. So, I mean, I guess I'm trying to turn Johnson into something.
Mm-hmm.
And, which means
you're
I'm going
not
to
going to get
give
anything
up
for him
something
to trade.
else. Well, yeah. So, Tough Acton, Tenacton, and the Bad Boys offered me Sean Green and Jonathan Baldwin for Chris Johnson.
And sadly, I don't think that's as terrible of a trade as it sounds.
No, it's not. I mean, it's just like, man, if there were 3 people this year that I was determined not to have on my team, Sean Green was one of them.
Right.
I tried to offer Richie, and he hasn't responded, but I don't think he's waiting on it or anything. I offered CJ and Antonio Brown for Sproles and Ramses Barden. Which I don't think is a lopsided, terribly trade, you know, but it's something to think about. Barden has very limited upside, I think. But, you know, with injury, that can change.
Mm-hmm.
Sproles is obviously Sproles for Brown and then Barden for Johnson. I don't think he'll take that.
I would.
You would?
I would.
I would.
If I was him, I would like that.
I totally would. So I don't know. We'll see.
But I really like Antonio Brown.
I really do too. My ability to offer him up rests upon the idea that now Denarius Moore is back, and I've got LaFell, who I absolutely believe in, and then Harvin, and then on my bench still Justin Blackman, who's probably cuttable, and then I picked up Brandon Gibson last week just as a let's see what happens kind of thing. And of course, he had a terrible game immediately following. Okay, so we should probably get into the wrap it up kind of segment here. Is there anything else trade-wise or anything else on your mind?
Not really. I think we've covered it, and for the sake of time.
What do you think about Greg Little?
Oh, Greg Little. I think that he is completely droppable.
That sucks, doesn't it?
Yep. I was convinced before the year that he was going to be having season, not great, but kind of like what Michael Crabtree's having right now, which in a PPR is solid, not spectacular. And he is just a disappointment, I think, with his quarterback being as poor as he is. I just think it is a toxic situation, and I'm going to move on from him.
Even in a dynasty situation?
I'm not sure about in a dynasty situation.
I mean, he's definitely benched in that situation.
I'm
going to probably try to go with Andre Roberts if I need a fourth wide receiver.
Yes, I think that right now there's people out there that I actually like better. Like I think I got him on waivers, but you know, Jeremy Kearney or Curley, whatever his name is.
I put in a bid for him as well.
But it's just for a couple weeks. It's not for necessarily a long time because they have a terrible quarterback situation. So.
Yep.
But yeah, I would hold on to Little in Dynasty, but he's almost like Chris Johnson. You bench him until he does something.
Yeah, I agree.
Because he's had 2 weeks of nothing and 1 week of mediocre.
Well, all right then. It's been another episode of the worst television show ever. Subtitle, the worst fantasy football show ever. Thanks for not watching, everybody that's not watching, and we won't see you next week, y'all. Here's the credits and stuff. Worst fantasy football show ever, produced by your mom. Bloobity-doo. We recorded it today. Peace out.
Mom, I'm done with my segment.